former Cabinet Minister, former Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland. Delighted that you're here today. We're going to start on something personal to you. We're going to start by talking about the fact that your 20-year-old daughter, Millie, has autism. Now, she's not here, so I'm going to ask how it affected you, her dad, as you were growing up, as she was growing up.
I think like many parents, many families, we've been through the journey of, first of all, identifying the issue, trying to get help, trying to get a diagnosis, and then working our way through the system, which was a challenge for us and is a huge challenge for many, many families across the country. I think people are very much aware of autism, but we've still got a long way to go, I think, in terms of provision, both for children and indeed opportunities for adults in employment. And as my child, grows into adulthood, like any parent, we ask the question, what's going to happen next? What will happen after we are gone? All these questions wake you up in the middle of the night. And therefore I thought using those experiences was really the least I could do as an MP, and therefore I chair the all-party group on autism, and now I'm leading a review for the government into opportunities for employment and increased employment for autistic people, because the figures are shockingly low. Only 2 out of 10 autistic adults, have a job. And that really, yes, 2 out of 10. So we've got to do better than that.
What do you think it should be? It should be 10 out of 10, shouldn't it?
Well, I mean, what I'll say is, neurotypical people, 8 out of 10 have a job. Disability generally, 5 out of 10. And here we are with autism, 2 out of 10. Now, that's not the fault of autistic people. We've got to work with business and industry to remove some of those, obvious stumbling blocks to opening up not just the recruitment of autistic people, but the retention as well in jobs. And that's the work I'm going to be doing with the DWP and with Autistica, one of our leading research charities, over the next few months.
What do you think the primary prejudices are from employers?
I think there's a worry that somehow there's a risk employing autistic people, that there will be a problem in terms of attendance or reliability. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. Companies that are employing autistic people are reporting huge benefits from different ways of thinking, different ways of working, and a true diversity when it comes to the talents that autistic people have. And I want to spread that best practice. I want it to be shared and become universal so that we can deal with what is a problem of so-called economic inactivity for hundreds of thousands of people in our country. And that's the aim of this review.
And final question on this, when do you hope the review will be completed by?
Well, I don't want to mess about. I want to get on with this year, and I'd like it published in the autumn so that then government can respond and we can get on with the job of recruiting and retaining tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands more autistic people in employment.
Fantastic. That statistic, 2 in 10. Wow, thank you for telling us about that. You were in charge of our justice system. I wanted to ask you about the protests, the climate protests that are, they're sort of part of our lives now, but tens of thousands are expected this weekend in the capital. Have we got the balance right between protecting the right to protest and protecting the rights of people who are just going about their ordinary business, want to be in the London Marathon, what have you?
Well, that balance was very much in my mind when we brought forward legislation to strengthen police powers and to make sure that important and much-loved events like the London Marathon aren't disrupted by people who, whilst they have a right to express their view, don't really have the right to disrupt the lives of the rest of us, thank you very much. And that's why I think the legislation, the laws that we've passed, strike that balance. A responsible protest group will talk to the police and say, look, we want to make this demonstration. How can it work best for everybody? And then the police will, of course, take into account the right to free speech and accommodate and seek to help groups that want to make legitimate protests. But what I think is unacceptable, and I think unacceptable to the vast majority of the British people, is this, sudden lightning strike without any warning, disrupting not just everyday lives and going about our lawful business, but big events like the London Marathon. Now, I don't know about you, but I like running, and I haven't done a marathon, but I've done a few half marathons in my time. And you need to just focus and concentrate on the road ahead. And I can't think of anything worse than a protester disrupting what is often charitable fundraising. So, my plea to them is, look, think again, please, guys. Make your point, but don't make it in a way that upsets and disrupts much-loved events like the marathon.
Very good. I want to talk to you about immigration now. Firstly, about what's happening in your constituency. I believe there are 5 refugee hotels in your Swindon constituency. Is that right?
Well, I think that Swindon has a proud history of welcoming and accepting asylum seekers, and we have local charities like the Harbour Trust that do great work, and I've got to say the local council is good too. But whilst we're prepared to do our bit, I think it's really important that people don't presume or abuse the hospitality that we have, which is why it was very important to me that the Home Office gave me an undertaking that they wouldn't increase the number of hotels in our local area and would work very hard to resettle, particularly our Afghan guests who want to be able to settle in the UK and who've left real persecution. And I think locally, if that issue can be dealt with, we have 2 hotels with Afghan refugees in them. If that can be worked upon, and there's a special government programme to do that announced last month, I think that would be really welcome. My plea has been, we've got asylum seekers not able to do anything. Some of them are going on the black market and working for half the minimum wage. Why aren't we honest about it and actually get them into work, get them registered so we know who they are, where they are, and paying a contribution towards their keep? I think that's common sense, and I think we should be doing much more of that.
The government have announced plans, or say they are soon to announce plans, to house newly arriving migrants on perhaps military bases or disused ferries. What I'm not clear about is whether the government plan to stop using hotels that are being currently used and to move those people, those migrants, out of those hotels and into perhaps more suitable accommodation. What's your preference on that?
Well, I think the government has to do both. I think it's got to move people out of hotels. Let's face it, these are legitimate businesses that could be serving the tourist industry or indeed local employment and indeed local jobs, people coming to work in, for example, Swindon. And I want that to come back to normal as soon as possible. So in my view, they need to be firing on all cylinders, using appropriate accommodation in the way you described, but also then stopping this undue reliance on hotels to house often very disparate groups of people, families in perhaps very inappropriate settings, and offering, I think, a better, frankly, a more humane way of dealing with this problem.
The illegal immigration bill is back in the House of Commons next week. You have expressed some concerns about those proposals. Will you vote for them next week?
Well, I need to see exactly what the amendments are, what proposals will come forward. I'm pretty sure, and I hope that the government are listening to the point that I and others are making about the need to do everything at the same time. So whilst I think a crackdown on illegal migration is perfectly fair and proper, at the same time we need to know what those safe and legal routes the government wants to adopt are going to be, what they look like, how that's going to be arranged, and together with the government's commitment to have a cap on asylum seekers, which I think is reasonable, that we're doing all these measures in a synchronised way. So if we get more of a sense of that synchronicity next week, I think that will certainly impress me and others who have expressed concerns about this.
So you're looking to be convinced before you vote for that?
Well, of
for the
course
proposals.
I am. And I'll be more than happy to engage with colleagues on this issue in the days ahead.
Okay. Second jobs, MPs, should they have them? It's a live debate. You are a practising barrister, as well as being an MP. Some people say you can't give a full service to your constituents because of that.
I totally disagree. If I was a doctor, I don't think there'd be, or a nurse, or another professional, I don't think anybody would be having this debate. I think it's entirely legitimate for somebody like me, who was 20 years as a lawyer before I ever became an MP, to want to maintain my qualification. And I think it brings a lot more to the table. I feel that I was able to contribute with much greater authority to debates in Parliament because of my professional experience. And I think that now that I'm no longer a minister, it's actually incumbent upon me to not sort of stay in the Westminster bubble, in that little comfort zone, but to go outside and to relearn some of those skills and to bring them back in to Parliament. But the biggest second job I had, Gloria, it was being a minister and being a cabinet minister, which was an all-consuming task. And, I simply say to people, it's a different type of second job, but it's legitimate, and in fact it's healthy for politicians to do that rather than just be boring, one-dimensional career politicians who have to depend upon the whips for their meal ticket and have nothing else to fall back upon.
Speaking of dimensions, I read that you have many other interests. Music is a big passion of yours. What sort of music are you into?
Yeah, well, jazz is my first love, and I love, the great American popular song, the great standard, the Cole Porters and the Irving Berlins and all those wonderful Gershwin tunes, and I've got a pretty weird memory for lyrics, so when it comes to karaoke, I don't need the screen for a lot of these great songs, so I can just sort of sing them off pat.
Do you do karaoke?
Well, I do. I have done, and I'm always happy to, pick up the mic and have a go. And singing and music's been a huge part of my life since I can't remember when. And I think it keeps me sane, keeps my feet on the ground.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Well, I do like a bit of Frank Sinatra, so I could do My Way, That's Life, New York, New York,
brilliant.
All the big showstoppers. Always happy to lay down a line and get everybody to join in.
I'm trying to think of a quick pun. Well, that was Robert Buckland's real me. He did it his way.
I love it.
Robert Buckland. That's been a genuine pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gloria.